talk artificial intelligence, blockchain technology. There's a tendency to just think these things are to make your work easier when it comes to blockchain, or you think about it as cryptocurrency, but you can apply these things to virtually all facets of life. And this morning, we want to see how we can use this to fight corruption, procurement fraud, all of that in governance, and of course those who aid and abet it outside of governance. We're joined by CEO of NatQuest, Dr. Salisu Uba, who has his PhD in digital procurement and supply management, also a fellow, Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, CIPS. Joins us virtually from London. Welcome to the Morning Brief, Dr. Uba.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
As I said earlier on, a lot of people just think of blockchain, AI, and they think, oh, how can I use it to edit my text or tell it to do some task for me, or how can I use it for cryptocurrency? But clearly the applications are wider than that. And, you know, procurement is a major deal when it comes to fighting corruption in Nigeria. We're going through another budgeting process now, and sometimes you see quotes, you're wondering, how is a computer 100 million naira? What's going on, right? So how can we better leverage artificial intelligence, particularly to ensure that governance is more transparent, is more effective and efficient, and the right monies go to the right places?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's quite interesting. Fundamentally, we need to understand why is blockchain technology and AI really important in today's public procurement space. Now, of course, a lot has been said around blockchain, but a lot of people are quite familiar with blockchain technology because of its application within the financial sector. But if you look at broadly its application, particularly within supply chain, right, and particularly supply chain, when we look at procurement, and procurement, public procurement is quite significant. Recently, there was a study conducted by the European Commission on the use of blockchain and AI across public sector in almost all part of the world. And it's quite fascinating how different countries are using blockchain technology and AI to transform public procurement. Now, one of the key important aspects to emphasize is that people don't really understand the importance of public procurement. Everything you see in this world is created by someone somehow, and there is an element of procurement in it, because you need to source for the right material, for the right product or services in order to transform a particular process, product, or even infrastructure to become of public use. Now, when the process is not efficient, is not transparent, then of course it has a significant impact, whether in terms of the quality, the output. Take, for example, in healthcare, right? In defense, in manufacturing. Everything that we consume has some element of procurement. Now, as regards to blockchain technology, the aspect of decentralization, immutability, and most importantly, the transparency of recording information, right? Because it's a database, right, that we transact information, we store data. But you cannot start talking about blockchain technology when fundamentally we have not digitized our processes, right? And that's the fundamental aspect of the starting point. Once you digitize your process, then you think about digitalization, which is creating a business process, interface between different agencies, departments and agencies, as well as suppliers across all segments or categories of different spends. But for AI today is a big deal because it has a lot of opportunities around generative AI, predictive, preventive. These are all things that has a lot of relevance and application within public procurement, particularly in a country like Nigeria, where we have enormous opportunity to really streamline and properly utilize our resources, because our resources are scarce, right? Government is always complaining, looking for ways to borrow more money to perhaps fund capital projects and recurrent expenditure. So we need to give really incredible amount of emphasis on digitalization and use of blockchain technology in order to transform the way we buy product and services across different part of the government.
So I know that when it comes to taxation, we're in a process right now where we're looking at reforming the tax laws in Nigeria. There are 4 bills before the National Assembly. We're making progress in terms of the contentious element that has to do with politics. But the tax law has a fiscalization element, which is tracking transaction, which makes it easy for the tax officers to be able to get our monies and it will not escape anywhere. In fact, there are penalties in Section 100 and Section 101 of that particular bill. But when you come to procurement, how are we going to be able to use AI to check corruption? Is it in the quotes, the procurement itself, or what exactly can we use AI to do when it comes to procurement? I use the issue of tax as a model of knowing we know what we're trying to do and how to do it. But for procurement, for those who don't understand how it can come, AI can help. How can it help?
Right. I think that's really interesting. So there's actually a published report by CIPS, which is the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, is the global leading organization, professional organization for procurement and supply chain, which operates globally. There are fundamentally 13 steps in any procurement, but predominantly public procurement. We have to think about the process of planning, right? How do we arrive at our need assessment, right? Who is responsible for declaring that there is absolute needs for a particular product or services across different organizations? That's number one. Number two, we have to think about aggregation. What does aggregation means? It means Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Defense, CBN, and all agencies of Nigeria, because if you look at all of them, they come under the federal government of Nigeria, and they are all funded by the public money. Now, aggregation means how can we collectively leverage on our buying, powers, right? Economic of skills, right? Then you have to think about your routes to procuring that product and services, whether you are doing competitive tendering, whether you are doing selective tendering, or whether you have a framework agreement where you have a few selected suppliers, or even a routine supplier selection where you have a catalog of buying product and services. And then, of course, you have to think about the evaluation, and then from evaluation to contract award, and then, of course, post-contract, which is quite critical, down to implementation and post-contract up to the exit. So in every element of this process, as I have mentioned, there is a significant amount of need to digitize the process. Digitizing the process is knowing who is responsible as an end user, right, to declare that there is need for a particular item. If it is a software, for example, how do we ensure that the existing license that we have in Ministry of Defense or Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Communications can be utilized by existing ministries, so that we are not duplicating our spendings? But we need access to information and transparency across the process. You cannot get that when you have a manual procurement process, right? Then from supplier selection, that's where it is interesting. If I ask you today, who are the top 10 contractors of the federal government of Nigeria where the government has a strategic spend? The information is not there. As a professional, I don't know, right? So do Nigerians, they don't know, right? And that's critical, because we have to think about who are these suppliers, right? What is the spend? What type of contract are they getting, right? And how is this contract being implemented? So it's a process that needs to be digitized and integrated into a centralized platform. And then you think about contract. We all know the case of the P&ID, right?
Right.
Is an issue of contract management, right? Do we have a centralized contract management system in Nigeria? No. It needs to be digitized so that you track and know who is responsible for what, when.
All right.
If there is a cost overrun, how, right? What is the impact?
Well,
what is the reason for that cost?
Dr.
Right?
I can bet you that.
Think about post contracts, right?
Right. I can bet you that by the time we do some of these things right, I think you can clearly see why there's some sort of lethargy in ensuring that things are done right way? Because you still find a lot of times that those in charge of departments, agencies, ministries are the ones using their own companies to get some of these contracts. And it's quite funny how some of these things you can see the trail online, even though it's not together. But if you're able to follow the trail, you realize that, wait a minute, the name of the director of this company is the same as the name of the person in charge of the same agency, giving either feeding contract or, so I think when we're able to do this right, then we can see the quantum of corruption really that has gone through that system. But I want to speak to something as we wind out on a final note. If we want to institute this in our system, we also have to look back and ask, how are we educating, how are we including this in our education curriculum to be sure that whoever is graduating from school has at least some sort of understanding of either blockchain technology, artificial intelligence. So if this person is drafted to the civil service, the person is going to do well, because you still have people in the civil service that are struggling to use computers and now want to use AI and blockchain. So I want you to speak to that as we wind down. I've seen your education trajectory. A lot of the knowledge you got, you didn't get here in Nigeria. So we need to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Awareness is quite key. And of course, I always say the fundamental of any society is about knowledge and skills. And knowledge is what we have learned, and skills is our ability to practice what we have learned. And no society can thrive without the application of knowledge into practice. But again, in terms of procurement, I think predominantly there is significant, improvement in terms of the knowledge of procurement, right, as quite a critical aspect of our lives, right? For example, Kaduna State University is one of those universities that was first accredited by the Chartered Institute of Procurement to provide a specialized, highly recognized global procurement and supply chain certifications. And again, I know, of course, the CIPS Nigeria is doing incredibly a lot in terms of bringing a kind of collaboration between the Bureau of Public Procurement. But what I see, the big opportunity or the big picture here today, we need a digital marketplace for public procurement in Nigeria.
All right.
And this is where you can tap into the opportunities of AI, right, to not just dictate, unusual transactions and anomalies, but of course it can serve as a critical tool, right, that public organizations can use in order to enhance their processes.
Well, this is yet another wake-up call, Dr. Oba. We have to really wake up and do things the right way. Else, I don't want to say the world will move past us, but we have to thank you so much for this wake-up call yet again. We've been speaking with Dr. Salisu Uba, CEO of NatQuest. NatQuest, of course, deals in supply chain, getting the right people for those who need it. And also, he has his PhD in digital procurement and supply management. Thank you for your time, Dr. Uba.
Thank you. Bye.
We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we'll talk about food. And don't forget, we still have the biggest trending topics for you. So stay with us right here. We'll be right back.